Moshe. Ariel, how are you?
Wonderful to see you feeling better.
Thank you.
Good to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you. Fill me up, but it didn't happen yet. And I don't want to take away the opportunity from you. So it's a Wednesday. On Wednesdays we don't speak about halacha. Relationships, parents, children. Of course, though, we started with the laws of, or less the laws, but more the mitzvot associated with Jewish marriage, and that, of course, was connected to my son getting married and celebrated the Shabbat. But in the meantime, today is the Brit Milah of one of my former students. Says he had a baby, Mazal Tov, and I'm missing it. I'm missing it because I don't know if you know him. Actually, a fellow who came over from China.
I don't know. Was he Kaifeng?
Yeah, a descendant. No. Or the second Chinese baby, Jewish Chinese baby, that of our generation. The girl from a and that was just my students for a baby, but nobody's yet taken me up on it. But in any case, so there's some questions about the Brit, and then another student of mine also had a baby, Bini Avadia. I don't know if you know him, if you were around. Bini from from San Diego.
I don't know who that is, Benny.
Anyways, he also had a baby about a week ago. The Brit is tomorrow. I'll be missing that as well.
I know who that is.
Okay.
I know.
Yeah, great guy. And he had a baby 7 days ago, and the Brit is tomorrow. And they had some interesting questions about those. That's also part of the mitzvot of relationships. I'll just mention to you. The first question was about the Brit. The first Brit it's this morning. Unfortunately, it's not the 8th day. The 8th day after the birth was on Friday.
Okay.
Or actually, no, the birth was on Shabbat, which means the 8th day was on Shabbat, which we all know that we do have britot on Shabbat, even though you're not allowed to create a wound. You had your brit on Shabbat. Amazing. Born on Shabbat. Amazing. So usually the brit is done on the 8th day, even though you're not allowed to cause a wound on Shabbat. It's one of the 39 malachot. Believe it or not, the 39 malacha is called shchita. You're not allowed to shochet, and even if you're not doing shchita on an animal, but on a person. So you got to watch out when you're playing with your little brother and you're punching him, in in the arm, to toughen him up. As long as there's good reason for it, educational purposes, of course. In any case, causing a wound on Shabbat is prohibited. But when it comes out the 8th day, that mitzvah aseh doche lo taseh. So the positive commandment to do a circumcision on the 8th day overrides the Shabbat. And so they called me up and they said, right, the Brit is on Sunday, right? And I said, what? Why the Brit should be on Shabbat? He said, what? Someone told us that the Brit is on Sunday. I said, I don't know who you asked, but... And then as he keeps on talking, he says, well, there was a C-section. He didn't tell me that. Now that's an interesting... The truth is that, in Parshat Tazria, where it discusses the laws of Tumat Leida, says Isha ki tazria v'yalada zachar v'tam'a shivat yamim ki mei nidat devota titma. It says that there's something called a special type of ritual impurity associated with giving birth, leida, and for men, for a baby boy, it's 7 days. For a baby girl, it's 14 days. Whatever it is, then there's other extended laws of ritual purity and impurity, which pretty much don't apply nowadays because we don't have a temple. But then the Torah, right after it starts talking about these laws of ritual impurity for a birthing woman, it says, once it's talking about 7 days, it says, on the 8th day, he makes sure to do the circumcision. So regardless of whether or not the purity and impurity, the Torah makes a point and adds in the law of circumcision. Even though the mitzvah of circumcision was mentioned elsewhere, the Torah adds it in there. Rabbi Yossi says, well, we see that the Torah juxtaposes the law of circumcising on the 8th day and this idea of tum'at leida. Now, a woman who has a C-section, where it doesn't have a regular birth, she doesn't have tum'at leida. It's very interesting. Obviously, that makes, as I said, it makes no difference nowadays because of the way, we don't really have the laws of tum and tara like we used to. But if you were to in Hebrew it's called yotzei dofen. She comes out of his side. She comes out of the mother's side. So basically, you rip open the mother's stomach. Don't rip it, but and you take the baby out, not through the birthing canal. Do we not? Machlokas Tanaim, Machlokas Amoraim, Machlokas Rishonim. Bottom line is, we follow the Shulchan Aruch, who says you should be machmir, and whenever there's any doubt, we don't violate the Shabbat. And so the law is that if a woman gives birth on Shabbat, in a regular birth, the Brit Milah is on Shabbat. But if she gives birth through a C-section, why is it called a cesarean section, by the way?
Julius Caesar is attributed to being the person who first developed the idea.
Yeah, I kind of expected Moshe to come up with that answer. That's the type of tidbit, which is I did know the answer, but I was just checking to see if Moshe would be true to fame. True to fame.
Why do I feel like I'm being the butt of a joke right now, Rob?
You're not at all. It's just a quirk. It's a quirk which we love. It's endearing. It's an endearing. They're not in the a type of things which you're very good at. That's really what this shiur has been about. Really, we're going to get to Jewish marriage, but since I want to share with you, and that's the way you learn sometimes by personal stories, and sometimes the rabbi gets these questions. It's a related topic, and that's why I shared it with you. So yeah, the Brit, but then it should have been on Sunday. Today is not Sunday. Well, the baby was jaundiced. There's a chemical in the I think it's I don't know if it's a hormone. It's a chemical called bilirubin. Bilirubin is Chinese. He does look a little bit like he's slanted eyes. It's very interesting. The mother is Australian, and she's not in any way Chinese, but the baby is somehow a mix. And in any case, they couldn't have the Brit because if the baby's not 100% healthy, doesn't have the bilirubin below, I believe, whatever. I don't know exactly the number offhand now. Anyways, the baby was they had to be checked over and over until finally, when the level of this hormone comes down, then you're allowed to do a Brit Milah, and that came out to be today. So then I got to ask the question. Usually a Brit is in the morning. I told them, don't make it in the morning because I won't be able to come because I'm teaching. And I have it takes precedence over my attending the Brit Milah, although I really feel very, very attached to this student of mine. It was my student over 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. But
if the Rav just didn't come in today and wasn't teaching, then you wouldn't be busy in the
there's a debate.
The Rav could have brought us with him to the Brit Milah, and he could have given us a shiur specifically about Brit Milah.
All good ideas. Unfortunately, in any case, the Brit Milah was, the question was, they wanted to do it in the morning because they're nervous. The mother was a little nervous having her young newborn undergo surgery, and that's the way it works. It's a difficult thing many times. It's emotional for many of the parents to have this sort of violent intervention. In preparation beforehand, you give them a little bit of some kind of a acamol, and anyways, she was nervous about doing it in the afternoon. She got requests from her parents. Her parents are in Australia. They would rather have it than later in the day so that everybody could watch on Zoom or whatever the different devices. And they wanted to know, are they allowed to make it later in the day? They really were hoping that I would tell them that they're not allowed to because they wanted to have it first thing in the morning. In the end of the day, the halacha is, and this is important, keep this in mind because the next story I'm going to tell you about the next student also is a question of the mitzvot. Zrizin. Right, so what does zariz mean?
Quickly.
Quick. Zrizin are people that have alacrity. They have quickness. You're supposed to be quick when it comes to mitzvot. Do the mitzvot as soon as possible. And so that's a principle in halacha. It's not as strong as what we said before. Aseh, doche, lota aseh. It's not used to push off mitzvot or to hurry them up beyond when there's another halachic mitzvah. But when there's no other major reason to push it off, you should try to do it as soon as possible. And so the Brit Milah has to be done in the daytime, could only be done in the daytime. So that's why you find many times a Brit Milah is first thing in the morning, right after Shachrit. Some people do it early in the morning because people who want to attend have to go to, it's usually in the weekday, people have to go to work. So if you do it early in the morning, people can attend the Brit Milah and then go to work. This is commonly done. Although, since the only reason to really do it first thing in the morning is this principle called Zrizi Makdimin Mitzvot, it can be overridden by other considerations. For example, if you want somebody to attend who lives far away, they can't get there by 8 in the morning. That would be impossible. So, or Aunt Bessie has to travel, and it's very important for her to be there, and she will feel part. You want her to be there. There are reasons where, for the sake of the, it's called kavod habriot. Dignity is reason for an hour, for 2 hours, for 3 hours. It's commonly done for mitzvot, for example, a burial. We talked about it the other day. It may be a bigger issue to put them off overnight. That might be getting into customs of Minhag Yerushalayim and so forth. But if it's on the same halachic day, if it's on the same halachic time, and it's just a question of a couple of hours this way or that way, there is quite a lot of room to be lenient. And I've made britot myself, not first thing in the morning, but later in the afternoon to allow people to come. And it's not uncommon to have a brit in the afternoon. Unfortunately, they were not happy with my answer because they wanted to do it first thing in the morning. But I said, halachically, you can have it in the afternoon if that's convenient for you or for your guests. But the most important thing is the mother, of course. She has to feel comfortable. She has to feel happy. She has to be ready. And if she wants to have it in the morning, Zoom, let them get up earlier. Let them, take an hour off work and their Zoom, and they'll work out the Zoom. You're not going to push off, make the mother uncomfortable for, if it's. So I let them I didn't give a psak. I said, it's up to you. It's up to you. So they decided to make it this morning, and I didn't tell them that I would. One halachic discussion that we had today about, honoring parents, honoring children, the mitzvah brit milah, and so on and so forth. The second question was interesting about the second couple, which also, sorry, it's a little bit of a racial off-color remark, like we had about the Billy Rubin and the yellow and the. So there's another this couple, our student Benny, he married an Ethiopian. And I saw a beautiful picture. I'm going to share it on the Facebook soon of the yeshiva. And so everybody was interested. He's an American kid, and she's Ethiopian. So I think the baby's a little mocha, sort of. But in any case, the Brit Milah is on time. It's tomorrow morning, Thursday in the morning. Again, I won't be able to attend. I gave my apologies, but we don't push off learning Torah. If I wasn't a teacher, it'd be something else. But the question became, what about Pidyon Haben? Because it's a firstborn son.
You give a silver coin, right?
So you give, usually, it's the equivalent of 5 shekels in the Torah's time, which is about 100 grams of silver. It can be a beautiful dish. It can be a cup. Common custom is choose 5 coins, which have the weight of 100 grams of silver.
In America and Canada, the pin club was to use
Silver dollars. 5 silver dollars.
Right.
It worked
They still do it today in the US and Canada.
That's right. That's right. Here in Israel and in other countries, they actually Israel I know has minted special coins for the mitzvah of Pidyon Haben. It's like commemorative coins. You have them. Wow.
I thought two of them. Just one because it's cool, and one that I use when I did my viewer.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. It's interesting. In any case, Pidyon Haben, this baby was born on Thursday. That's why the Brit is going to be on Thursday, the 8th day. What that means, though, is that Pidyon Haben is the redemption of the firstborn. Has to be done. Who can tell me when you do the redemption of the firstborn?
30 days.
So it has to be done after 30 days. So that means really on the 31st day. 31st day, if she was born on Thursday, if the baby was born on Thursday, that means 4 weeks later, Thursday is going to be day 29. Friday's day 30. Day 31 is Shabbat. You can't do Pidyon Haben on Shabbat. You can't handle the coins. The custom is, it's not like the Torah says on the 8th day that it overrides the mitzvah of Shabbat, and we do circumcision on the 8th day. Pidyon Haben usually we don't do on the 31st day if it comes out on Shabbat. And so then the custom is, therefore, to do Pidyon Haben the first chance after that, the beginning of the 32nd day, which is Motzei Shabbat. Even though usually we don't do Pidyon Haben at night, usually do it in the daytime, like all the many other mitzvot which we do only in the daytime. Like we said, circumcision must be done in the daytime. Pidyon Haben can be done at night. It's usually not done at night for other calculations, because if you do it on the 31st day, at nighttime, sometimes you won't have the complete 30 days. Or some people actually do have the mitzvah of, do have the custom of doing the Pidyon Haben the night of, right at the beginning of the 31st day. It can be kosher, but many people say you should do the next day, time, like most people do. Again, the principle is only one of Drizin Makdimin. As long as you do it on the 31st, in this case the 32nd day, it can be done at night or in the daytime if there's any calculation. And that's what I gave my tshuva to the question asked to me. And then they asked, well, if I'm pushing it off, can I push it off already to Monday? And the answer is no. You have to at least do it on the 32nd day, if not the 31st day. But you have a room to play with if you want to have people come. Nowadays, now we're in the winter time, so there's a long Saturday night. It shouldn't be a problem to have the event. Usually, the question was, do you have to have a minyan? The answer is yes and no. You don't actually need a minyan to give the coins to the Kohen, but the custom is to celebrate with a meal. As a matter of fact, the Pidyon Haben is usually done after you start the meal. It's in the middle of the meal. There's many reasons for that. I won't want to be sidetracked for too long. Already it's been too long, our little detour into the practical questions we had this week. But in any case, you do have a meal. The meal is essentially part of the Pidyon Haben, and that's why it's best to have a minyan, and you wash, And although not technically it's not a requirement, it is the custom, and you should the meal, participating in the meal of the Pidyon Ben is such a great mitzvah that the rabbis say that whoever participates in a meal of Pidyon Ben, 84, it's as if you fasted 84 fasts. So it's a really a whole night. In the summertime, when it's 10 at night, you can imagine that people can't travel, and so then there's room to push it off to the next day. It's fine. It's only an issue of Zrizi Makdimin, which we try to do the mitzvah as early as possible, but for the sake of honoring various people and showing them their due respect, there's room to push it off. Anyways, any questions on what I said now about Brit Milah, about Pidyon Ben, about the various mitzvot that are associated with childbirth? And we'll get back to our topic at hand, which is Jewish marriage, if there's no particular questions. Yeah.
What about twins and
Twins, so you do two. You got two, only one Pidyon Ben, but you got two Brit Milah. We've had that before, where you have a double Brit Milah. It's fascinating how to do it. There's a debate, because we try to avoid doing mitzvot together. It's called Ein Osim Mitzvot Chavilot. The Talmud says you're not supposed to do mitzvot bundles by bundles. Each mitzvah is precious. It's a precious jewel. And so, what do you do when you have two britot together?
One in the morning, one in the afternoon.
Then you have a break. You have a whatever, a Dvar Torah, and then you do the second one. They shouldn't be run on one after the other, because we try not to do them together. Right? You've heard that sometimes they make these mass weddings of hundreds of couples. It's not ideal halachically. We should try to give each one its due, give each mitzvah its due. And sometimes it does happen. There's a celebration. A lot of people do giur together. And so, sometimes after giur, a married couple that does giur, they have to get married. Before then, they weren't married Jewishly. They weren't really considered married. So they have to get married. So if you have many times, people are going to the mikvah. On the same day, you'll have many couples going to the mikvah. And so you'll have a chuppah set up right there outside the mikvah many times. That's the way it's done. And you have a wedding. It's a wedding factory. It's a chuppah factory. You have one after the other. Although it's not ideally, each one should go home maybe on the same day. They can't sleep together. They can't be together until they get married, Jewishly. But on the same day, sometimes you have a wedding party made somewhere else. We've had that many times here in Machon Meir. Couples that have gone through giur here and got married that same day with a party. I did one here for Israel. I don't know if you guys, maybe Nathan knows Israel from the Philippines. Tov, other questions, or let's move ahead. Let's move on back to Jewish marriage. Who gets married must see his bride at least once before getting married. At least once. I had a discussion last night with a former student about a shidduch, and we talked about his nerves, about going out on a date, and he didn't want. He had all sorts of issues he has to work out. He's of eligible age, and now he has a job, and really there's nothing holding him back except for his psychological issues of dating and marriage. And Bezrat Hashem, I gave him some advice. He's going to get some more good advice with a therapist. I very much encourage people getting whatever help they need. It's a complicated business. In any case, he was worried. It's his first time dating as a religious Jew. Being a Baal Tshuva, he also had to go through a giur process. But and he had done dating. He had girlfriends before when he was not Jewish, really, but before he was in the Orthodox world for sure. And from what he had heard, and that's why we're having these classes, because you hear all sorts of things. And if you in the Orthodox world, once you date, it's like chik-chak, as they say in Hebrew. Chik-chak means very quick. Like no dilly-dallying. If you like the person, some people thought maybe you're expected to get engaged after 2 or 3 meetings. And I told him, no. There's many different communities. It's true. In some communities, it's like that. And my son got engaged after 3 meetings. But I told him that my wife was actually ready after a few of our dates, after a few weeks, or I don't know exactly. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't sure. Everybody's got their own decision-making capabilities and their own internal processes, and it took me 6 months till we got engaged, which is not a lot. It's not a little. It's But I try very hard to never put a number on these things, because every situation is different, every person's different, and of course you have to have there is a social context, and you have to be aware of that. You have to have a matching of expectations. In some circles, it's expected after, a few dates, maybe 10 dates, maybe a month, maybe whatever it is, people start to ask questions. Wait, aren't you getting engaged yet? But again, there are different circles and different societies, and everyone has their standards. But, of course, the context of this discussion in the Talmud is the idea of arranged marriages. And it was in the ancient world, and even today in some circles, that marriages are arranged by the parents between other parents that have common values, that have maybe similar or financial abilities, which is part of the deal of getting your children married off. I remind you that in the ancient world, try to refrain, guys, from the talking. It's disturbing to me. Okay. The little conversations make it hard for my throat. Apologize. Teaching many hours. I don't like to talk over other people. The other day. And of course, there's having children. But there's also a financial aspect, of course. In the ancient world, women really didn't work, or of any significant, not as a major breadwinner. And getting married was becoming had an element to it of financial stability. Was the parents wanted their daughters to get married so that they would have a home, have someone to care for them, to take care of them. Until today, it's true.
If they didn't, the parents would have to take care of them.
That's right. And it's still true today, because with all due respect, between the equality and the opportunities which women have, which are really unprecedented in history, and the major earth-shattering changes in the way society works, women are still the ones who carry the babies, as far as I understand. There's all sorts of I saw a movie once about Mr. Mom or something like that. I don't know, whatever. But biologically, what was it?
With Schwarzenegger.
There's something like that, yeah. There is thoughts of one-day operations being possible, but the woman take care of the childbearing, and that extends into nursing, into recovery, and to child rearing, and the woman's role in a marriage there's a lot of child care involved with it, and when a woman is pregnant. Many times it's a difficult pregnancy, and after childbirth, many times it's a difficult birth, and you can be incapacitated for extended periods of time, and that's why most Western countries have something called maternity leave. Now there's something called paternity leave as well, and they're trying to make things equal, but. Usually things are not equal. In any case, so a woman many times is incapacitated from earning for extended period of times, and that's part of the reality of life. even in our modern society where women can work and can earn and can, it's still, we can't ignore that. And so the idea of the financial aspect of the woman being taken care of is something which should not be treated lightly, even nowadays. Some people want to say that, there's a financial aspect to marriage too. We're going to talk about it. We can't cover everything today. There's a financial aspect of marriage, but there's definitely in halacha, there's a lot of room for changing the standard. There's a standard agreement between husband and wife about who's responsible for the finances and how it works. We'll discuss it another time. But there's definitely room in halacha for changing that. And many women and many men say, well, let's just change it. The halacha gives us this ability. Let's change the standard because society has changed and earning power has changed and women's role in the workplace has changed. So why don't we just always change it? And many wise rabbis I've heard say that it's a little bit short-sighted, these suggestions, because if you consider childbirth and that being part of starting a family, being part of what you get married for, don't be so fast to think that everything has changed. It's actually very wise to have a system which is, even if it's not 100% equal, it's a system which takes into account the various parts of starting a family, which might make the financial arrangements different. And you might want to keep the standard arrangement, even though you can work within the system. As I said, it's very flexible. There's something to be said for the standard arrangement, which gives a lot more of the financial burden on the husband. In any case, getting back to that's just to give you context why the sages would even have to say such a thing. Even if their marriage is arranged between the parents, the bride must be seen by the groom at least once. Why? Rabbi Akiva said, because v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Why does it have to be at least one date? Why does he have to see the woman at least once? Because of, you should love your neighbor as yourself. Who can explain that to me? It almost seems like a non sequitur. The sentence doesn't make sense. What is he trying to say, Rabbi Akiva? Yossi, what do you say?
To live with someone requires you to love them. So you can't live under the same household without there being any love.
Okay, you're on the right track, and it goes back. Yep. Absolutely. In other words, we said last time that there's two mitzvot which you fulfill by getting married. One was pruvu, having children, to facilitate having children, and the other one is v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, to love your neighbor as yourself. We said there's many types of love. You can love your neighbor, or you could hate your neighbor more commonly. But you can hate your neighbor who's across the street because he's making noise, because he's messy, and he doesn't pick up after himself, or whatever it is. But that's their neighbor. But when it says v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, it doesn't mean necessarily neighbor. It means your friend. Friend. So there's different types of love. You should love every Jew. Whether you like him or not, you should love him. But Rabbi Akiva is telling us is that the ultimate expression, your chance, Ariel, your chance, Moshe, the ability to really achieve the mitzvah of loving someone other than yourself, like yourself. It's almost impossible, but let's say it's possible. Your greatest chance is when you get married. When you're loving your spouse like yourself, well, you become a unit. It's sort of like yourself, and maybe that's really the highest level of loving your neighbor is loving your wife or your husband. And for that to happen, Rabbi Akiva says, you want to enter a marriage where you have that potential, fulfilling the mitzvah of loving your neighbor. How? Loving your spouse. Part of loving your spouse, says Rabbi Akiva, is the physical attraction. If you get married to her without ever having seen her, and you take one look, and then sometimes it happens, there's no attraction, sometimes there's no physical attraction, sometimes, we're going to discuss it in greater length. We're sort of running out of time now. But we're going to discuss the role of looks in dating and marriage is very significant. It's very important. People just say, oh, it's not important whatsoever. They're going against Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says you have to at least see her once to know. You're not going to fall in love immediately. I don't think Rabbi Akiva was saying, oh, it's going to be love at first sight. And what he was saying is that sometimes you have to cancel out to make sure that there's not going to be any, any distancing or any sort of repulsion. You have to make sure that there's no repulsion. If she looks repulsive to you, that's not a good recipe for having a good marriage. But you have to have she has to be at least some kind of attraction there, or some possibility for future. Obviously, attraction and physical beauty is connected to the relationship. It's part of a larger sum of everything that goes into a relationship, which is emotional and psychological and common values. There's so much that goes into a relationship of love. You can't deny that part of the element of love between a man and a woman should be the physical attraction. And that's what Rabbi Akiva was saying. This mitzvah, that you must, and this is true till today, even in the most Haredi circles, I hope, they don't violate the clear instruction by Rabbi Akiva, that you're not allowed to get engaged, to get married, until you see the bride, or they see each other at least once. And because of this, a principle of you have to make sure that there is at least the potential for, in the future, to work up towards the highest level possible of the ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You should love your friend as yourself. Okay, we'll stop here. Continue with Zat Hashem next Wednesday, our series about relationships.